Thank you, Lee. Yeah, I have lots of stories about puppies. They're very cute. See me sometime later if you want to hear more about that. I didn't include them in my presentation, as some people have done in their presentations with their animals. So let me jump right in here. So first of all, I want to explain that where's this 20,000 number come from? So is that really that many people testing? And the answer is kind of yes and no. So yes, there is 20,000 people that download the Firefox browser every day. And they test it. They use it in different configurations, and send us feedback. Not every single one of those, not every single day, but we do get feedback from them. So this is on an average day that happens. So that's where that comes from. And we've tried to incorporate that into our processes, and I think there's something to be learned there that could be applied to other non-open source projects. So first of all, I just want to say a little bit more about myself. Lee did a great introduction, but there's a couple things more. I was at Sun, now /Oracle, and I started out doing network testing on this high security operating system. So doing connects and sockets and accepts and those kinds of things. Went into management, moved over to JavaSoft and worked on the JDK. There, I started in a very small 3-person group doing the network testing and VM, virtual machine, JIT testing. From there, people just sort of kept adding things onto my work, as some of you might have seen. If you do a good job, they sort of pile more on. And then I ended up with 120 people working for me at one point there. I had the whole JDK responsibility of testing. From there, went to a startup. That was kind of fun to get back to hands-on stuff. Grand Central Communications was a very small startup company. It's not the Grand Central that Google is doing. Grand Central, I guess, sold the brand to them when they went under. And then finally, Firefox. I run the group there that does the web browser, the Thunderbird and Firefox applications. And we have a new mobile device. Now, one bit of sort of a disclaimer there. When I first signed up for this keynote, I was working for Mozilla, and since then, just very recently, I've moved on. So I'm actually dabbling in a new kind of independent testing and tool deployment position. So called Redwood QA. So that's where I'm at right now. And finally, the book was great fun. I learned a lot about the publishing business and had a good time working with different testers and developers talking about testing. So that's me, probably not as fast as I could have been. So first of all, I want to talk about motivations. So there's things that sort of drive people and excite people. And it's kind of different between open source and commercial software. And I kind of want to use that as set some context for how some of the open source lessons can be applied elsewhere. So first of all, where's the passion come from when someone does their work? In open source and in Mozilla, the passion is really with the community and with the users and the product, but it's really community focused. So doing the right thing for this community, this primarily volunteer community. Whereas in the commercial world, the passion is more around the product and the company. And I'd say in many cases, it's not even, I wouldn't even go so far to say it's passion. It's loyalty, maybe a lot of drive because you're hoping to go IPO and earn a bunch of money. But it's a little more of a job than open source projects, which tend to be a lot more passion. I'm not trying to say which is better or worse. They're just different, and there's different motivators. There's a difference in the chain of command. Some of you may know some about open source projects. We sometimes call the Mozilla project a meritocracy, which is more driven by people demonstrating their own merit, their own impact. And so people will sort of jump in, start doing things by demonstrating their abilities, their technologies, their skills. They work their way up to more authority. Very different from a corporate development where it's top-down control, right? So you have your managers telling what to do. You have very straight line of command. And if something needs to be handled, like a decision needs to be made or an issue has to be resolved, often it's done within that chain of command, sort of versus another chain of command. And so you get these silos going on, very different than open source. Another key area is where does information and tools, what drives that? What's the motivation behind there? In open source, it's usually 100% open. Everything on the Mozilla project can be seen by anyone in the world. The only exception is security bugs, of course. But all of our weekly meetings, we have this project meeting once a week. We have this for Thunderbird, one for Firefox. We have this sort of project-wide meeting with all the different products talking about schedules. We talk about schedule slips, problems with a feature being dropped. All these things are totally open. Would you ever see that in the corporate world? In the corporate world, they're very sensitive about the PR and the image and all that type of thing. So that is very different. And also with tools, the same way. It's very open how we use tools, what tools are used. The peers, the group really decides what tools are used. Whereas sometimes in the corporate world, it's the IT group, or maybe a manager decides they're going to spend money on this, so gosh darn it, we're going to use that. So this is a very different style. So moving on, I want to give kind of use a metaphor for what this openness looks like. So there's this tool called IRC. It's Internet Relay Chat. It's a group instant messaging. And so I have a little clip here. It's a dialogue between two people, a guy named Mike Morgamick and Tony Chung, who worked for me. And it doesn't really matter the specific content. The basic idea is, with this, anybody around the world, anywhere, at any time, can participate in what's going on. So that means both anyone in the world who's awake can look at the stuff and either just watch it and get information from it, or they can participate, they can give their own opinions. Also, if you're not awake, if it's 8 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, and you're in Japan and you're asleep in the middle of the night, you can wake up in the morning, review the logs, and see what went on, what decisions were made, what issues came up overnight, and everything's right there. So it's a fabulous tool for international collaboration. Also, another way this is a metaphor for the group is you can be very innovative with this tool. There's these bots or robots, plugins essentially, that you can put on this. And you can extend it in ways that makes it more impactful, more innovative, make your job more effective. So 2 examples there are, if you can see one there, every time you supply a link to in the thread, it immediately becomes a hot link and you can click it. So you can say, hey, check this out, and the other person can click on it, you go right there immediately. So it's very immediate, very impactful. You don't have to be cutting and pasting and go finding things, and just everything's right there. Another example is if you type in a 7-digit number, which is the size of our bug reports, it'll immediately go look to see if that's a valid bug report. If it is, put the synopsis and status right there where everyone can see it. And so you don't have to go hunting for that. Also, just like the URL, it links that to the live bug report, and you can go get more details. So these tools are really powerful for collaboration around the world, anytime, 24/7. Okay, of course, many things are the same, too. We of course, write test plans, we do manual testing, automated testing, we file bugs, we track metrics, all that kind of thing. Those are the good things, of course. We also have all the same bad things, too, as anybody else has. There's never enough resources. Has anyone had that problem before? Same thing with schedule changes or surprise bugs last minute. Anyone had surprise bugs before? So these things happen, of course, on open source projects along with any other project. And of course, the last one, they argue about tools. Tools are a big thing at this conference, right? So we have debates about which is the right tool, which is a favorite tool. Lots of debates about that. Okay, so I want to just dive a little bit into some key points about testing on the Mozilla project. Developers are responsible for their own testing. So in the old days, there were no testers, there were just developers. And we've carried that forward to the present day. It used to be like 10 developers. Now there's maybe 80 or 100 developers. But now, of course, there's a test team. And this is key to allowing, essentially, in the community, hundreds of developers checking in code. If we had all these community members checking in code without test cases, it would just get out of hand. There's no way the testing team could keep up. So automation is definitely king. Having the automation tools and test cases. We have something like 100,000 test cases that get run every day. On the other hand, we have about 2,000 manual test cases, and we're trying to automate those test cases, as many as we can. Another key thing is we continually seek feedback from our community. So especially these testers, these nightly testers and these beta testers. So when we come up to a major release, the number of nightly testers goes up to about 50,000 people. So if you imagine 50,000 people willing to try out a product that is not certified, not officially released, it's just amazing number of configurations that they can test for us and give us feedback on. For our beta releases, which happen about every 2 weeks to 4 weeks, those get tested by about 2 million people. Can you imagine a beta program with 2 million people? At Sun, we strive for 70 people, 70 people. And it was really hard to get really characteristic feedback from just 70 people. And the next, I just want to mention, we really enable the community to help us test. So there's this tool called Litmus. It's an online tool. Anyone in the world, 24/7, can log in and run manual test cases for us. That is hugely powerful. One of the challenges we have is on the development side, just the nature of the demographics, community developers are willing to spend hours testing every week, sometimes every day. It just seems like the demographic for testers they want to test for maybe an hour or two a day or maybe a week, which is, when you're only testing for an hour a week, you can't really get into like a development environment and the whole design, develop, debug, deploy cycle. So testers tend to come in and do more community testers, more bug triage, manual testing, giving us feedback. Another thing we have is this quality.mozilla.org website, which is a portal where people can go see what projects are available for people to work on, give us feedback there too. All these things you can see, and all of these things are linked in a blog that I will give you a link to later on. Double indirect link there. And finally, I just mentioned what the community test team does. The in-house testers, what they focus on things that the community isn't so good at. So the community isn't as good at developing large test suites, as I mentioned. They tend to come in for a shorter amount of time. So we tend to work on the test tools and the automated test development. Also, when there's this last-minute push before a release, maybe you have 3 days to test a release, we can't guarantee who will come and help us from the community, so we have to be able to do that ourselves. One interesting statistic is within about 2 weeks, we can find about 85% of the regressions by the community. So without really doing anything special, if a major regression gets in, it will be found by the community within 2 weeks. And so if we have that much time, we can sort of let the community do it. But if you don't have that much time, like for an urgent security release, we have to do it ourselves. Okay. So here's just a list of tools. It gives you kind of a quick snapshot of the tools we use. So for source control, it's Mercurial. That's kind of new. For builds, it's Cinderbox and BuildBot. Test harnesses, probably don't recognize those. The first 4 there are in-house tools we've built. They're all open source, so if you just do a Google on those names, you'll find them. Available to anybody. That's a whole separate topic, so I really can't go into it now. But I'd love to, if anybody has questions, I can go into what those tools do. Selenium, of course, I think everyone has heard about, so we'll leave it at that. I mentioned the Litmus tool for online tests. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Talos is our performance infrastructure. We have about 180 Mac Minis running tests on all the major OSs, and we have this whole infrastructure around doing performance testing. And finally, for our community collaboration, there's quality.mozilla.org, which is that QMO acronym. There's IRC, news groups, Google groups, and so forth. Okay. So now's a little bit of show and tell here. So hopefully this will be interesting and helpful for you. So this is a bit of an eye chart, so please bear with me and give me a chance before you start marking those green sheets saying my slides are too busy. So this one, the main thing I wanted to look at is on the bottom there's the table, right? So each column is a certain build configuration. So it might be optimized build on Windows XP or a debug build on Linux. That table actually is 131 columns wide. That's how many we build every day, how many different configurations we build every day. The little table on the left, that's sort of a log of events and the time the event happened. Very roughly, every 5 minutes, something happens in our build system, like a build starts, a build ends, a build fails, whatever. And the last thing I wanted to point out is up here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but up here, there's a sheriff schedule. So one of our processes is we always have a sheriff on duty. That sheriff can do nice things, like help you integrate if you have problems integrating your code. That sheriff can also do mean things, like if your build breaks if your code breaks the build and you're not around, he's going to yank your code out of there, and then you have to go fix it. We will not allow broken build. Any breakages must be fixed immediately. So either fix it immediately or you back out your code immediately. And so the next build cycle, it should be clean. And how this color coding works is the gray part, don't worry about that, that's a background color. Green means a successful build. Yellow means a build in progress. If there's a failure, build failure, it'd be red, and there'd be a log link in there. You can click right on the link and find out what happened. And if it's orange, that's a test failure. And again, you can click on the link and see exactly which test failed and what the failure message was. You click right down to the exact test case and test file through this system. This is open. This display is from Tinderbox, which I believe was built by University of Toronto. But if you look up Tinderbox, you can find information about this. Okay, so just zooming in a little bit, just a couple examples. One is there's these orange and yellow blobs here. These are in the live web page. Those are little flames. And so if you break the build, we say it's on fire, it's burning, and you must fix it right away. And so we have this little animated fire thing going on. The next one over here this is orange. Hope it's turning out kind of orange. And this is showing a test failure. So there's about 30,000 test cases that ran in this case. 2 failed, and you can click on that link and see exactly the failure. But even 2 failures will cause us to stop the build and force an immediate fix of the code. So we don't mess around. If you break anything, test or build, it has to be fixed immediately. We've seen if you don't fix these things right away, things start building up. People get sloppy. They let tests fail. Next thing you know, you have like 200 test cases that aren't working right, and people don't, just kind of are very laissez-faire about it. Okay, and one more shot, the eye test. So this is going out to the 50,000 foot level now. So I basically zoomed out as far as the browser would zoom out to see as many columns as I could. I can still only get 50 columns, so this is 55 of our configurations. And it's just to give you a picture of 55 configurations over 4 hours. So this is what it looks like in a kind of a 4-hour window, what our build system cranks out. So you see a bunch of greens that are completed build, successful. There's a bunch of yellows that are in progress, and a few oranges, which are test failures, and then no reds, which is really good. So the builds are clean. All these things, there's links to them in my blog. See the last slide, and you can get to those. Okay, and then the next thing I want to show you is our manual test tool. So this thing's called Litmus. If you do manual testing and you want to be able to expose those manual tests to anyone in the world, this is a good tool. I wouldn't say it's a great tool because it's been kludged together over the years and it's not quite super performant, but it is for manual test cases, so it doesn't really have to be that speedy. What we have here is the test case at the top. It's the feature is session restore. The test case is normal exit without saving session. There's a link to additional information in the paragraph at the top. There's 6 steps to execute to make that to run that test case. The one thing you don't see off to the right is there's a set of expected results. So you do exactly what you're expected to do. This is set up for sort of the casual tester or possibly the inexperienced tester. So we try to make it pretty simple so anyone can run these things. Someone that's new at it might take 5 or 10 minutes to run this to sort of figure out how to do the steps and to check the link. But an experienced tester might take 5 seconds to run some of these things. And then finally, down here we have the results. So this is web-based. So that person over in Germany someplace or in middle of India can just go through the test case, click on pass or fail, or maybe the test case is unclear to them, and it goes into our database. And then the next morning, we check to see if there's any failures or any unclear test cases, and then we fix that stuff up. Okay. And this is just to give you a quick view of what the report looks like when we're done. Luckily, we have no failures, so everything's good. The two things I want to point out are we have this column for trusted results, or trusted coverage, and community coverage. So the idea there is, just any random person testing, we don't know if they're really good or at what they're doing. We actually saw one person run, I think it was 2,000 test cases in less than 5 seconds. Something was funny there, right? So we can't trust everybody, right? Definitely can't trust everybody. So certain people have worked with us. We know them. We treat their coverage as trusted and more accurate, more reliable. Whereas just anybody else that we don't know, they get put into the community column. If we're coming down to the end of a release, we have to have the trusted coverage. If we're in between releases and we just want feedback, then we're happy with the community coverage. Okay, here's another eye test. So this is just meant to be a concept screen, so don't try reading it. So this is what I call a self-deployed dashboard. Okay, coin term right here. So in future conferences, if you want to use that term, make sure you credit me. The idea here is you can take a Bugzilla query or whatever bug system query and pass it to this utility, and it'll create a standard set of metrics for you. These metrics are about like priority and severity versus state of the bug, which developers have the most bugs in their queue, how many bugs do we have in the priority one or the various priority states. And so this is kind of a standard snapshot so we can see the health. That's what we've chosen as just a good way of kind of keeping on top of things. And it's great because anybody in the company can say, I have a new project, I want a dashboard. In 5 seconds, they have a dashboard. If it's a new lead in a group, they can say, I want a dashboard for my group. They give the query for their group's bugs, and they instantly have a dashboard. So visualizations are really critical, and if you can use tools like this, which quickly get you up to speed, that's great. I mean, there's all the keep in mind all the usual caveats. Be careful how you use bugs. Don't use them as a stick to beat on people, or they'll start gaming the system. So just be very careful about it. But getting visibility is really critical, and making sure your culture supports the idea of visibility, intelligence, being able to get perspective on how things are going is very important. So I'm just going to drill in real quick to one of those areas. So this is our add-ons at Mozilla.org website bugs. It's the status versus priority. So some of the things we ask ourselves or try to answer with this chart are things like, how are we doing? For example, you look at this and we have most of our bugs are fixed, verified, and they don't have a priority. Is that a good thing? Are we spending all of our time on things that we don't know the priority? That's probably not good. And keep in mind, we're doing 2 steps there. We're fixing a bug and we're verifying a bug, and we don't know if it's a high priority or not. So that's bad. On the other hand, the next biggest set is 37 under the P1 column. So that is good. We've done most of the work on bugs that are the most important in that column. Some of the things we look at are we spending too much time on are we letting too many bugs be declared invalid or will not fix, right? So in a way, this is like someone ignoring someone's feedback, right? Someone took their time to file a bug and feels something's important. And like, for example, there's one P1 bug that someone says won't fix. It's kind of frustrating to that user or that whoever filed the bug. I mean, it may be valid, but we want to keep an eye on that to make sure we're not discounting too many people because our feedback is very important. And the last thing I want to mention is we want to make sure things are moving from resolved to verified. We can't double check everything. And I like to think of this as like a different type of pair programming. So just like a developer, if they're developing some code, it's good to have 2 eyes on that. When you fix a bug, especially high priority, critical, complicated bugs, you really want 2 eyes on that. It doesn't have to be the developer in QA. It could be 2 developers. But having someone double check that is really important. So we do try to verify all the P1s and P2s with an independent person from the developer. All right, moving along. So the last general show and tell thing I want to show you is, this is probably the bane of everyone, but I think in Mozilla it's a particular challenge. So here's an example from 1 month. Okay, so in 1 month we had almost 1,600 people filing bugs and almost 2,700 bugs being filed. That's a lot of stuff to sort through. And it's interesting that if you look closely, about 60 people filed 5 or greater bugs, and then the rest of them are filed by other people. So that's over 1,500 people filing bugs from around the world, with all different skill levels, so all kinds of different quality of bugs. So there's good news and bad news there, right? There's good news in that we've got a ton of feedback, ton of configurations, ton of people, ton of users. The bad news is we have a ton of feedback. What do we do with all that stuff? So luckily we do have community triage people who go through it, and so the whole thing scales up, right? We have a ton of feedback coming in, we have a ton of people doing triage. It all works pretty well. The challenge for me as a quality guy is it's very organic, so it's hard to put your finger on exactly who is triaging those things. You can monitor the process, but if it gets out of whack too much, you don't have a lot of resources to put on it. It's kind of like a big ship, with a small rudder. If you start seeing that too many bugs are coming in that aren't being triaged, you can't just say, hey, let's grab 3 employees and throw them on it. You don't have 3 employees to do that. That's half of your test execution team. You can't do that. So you have to then try to get, inspire the community to help out with more triage. Okay, so now is the interactive portion of the presentation. So given that I've been sitting a little while and there's happy hour probably coming up pretty soon, we're going to do a little arm exercise, get your arms warmed up here. Okay, so hopefully I'm getting this, the use of the charter right. I hope John Bach doesn't get after me. So here's the charter, and I'm going to have you tell me, help me with the test case, okay? So the charter is test the number of bookmarks that 90% of the users save, okay? So the idea here is we want a test case that does the sort of the average, covers 90% of our users, right? So how many bookmarks do you think that 90% of the users save? So once you raise your hands, and if you believe that it's equal to greater than 100 bookmarks. Okay, so who thinks 90% of the people save 100 or greater, okay? How about 500 or greater? 500 or greater. Wow, no one? Well, this is going to go short. Turns out it's 2,000 bookmarks. So we did this study, and this is interesting. We have this tool called Test Pilot, which allows us to have people opt in, and we insert these instruments into the browser and allow people to just do their work for a week, and then we collect the data and then turn it off. And from this study, which is about 25,000 people, so you can kind of wonder how accurate it is, but 90% of the people had 2,000 or less bookmarks saved. And if you think about it, bookmarks, you have to, these are the saved ones, right? So you have to go and click the favorite button, or you have to drag the icon into your bookmark folder. So, so that's a lot. I mean, it really surprised me. Here's another question for you. I'll make this one a little quicker. So how many people think the maximum number of bookmarks saved was 10,000 or more? 10,000 or more. Smart, okay. 40,000 or more. A few. People are catching on here. Turns out it's 52,000 was the biggest number. Okay, I'll come back to that number in a minute. I guess just to speed this along a bit. So the other number we looked at was the number of folders. And this is, the reason I say this is, I'm trying to follow up kind of on Alan Page's idea of you really need to figure out what the users are doing. For this one, I think when we had lots of debates about what is this number? How big of a test case should we, how big of a profile should we build? And I was actually arguing for, I think it was like 500 at the time, so I was way off. It was 2,000, right, for the average, kind of the 90% case. So you don't really know. You are not the user, right? That's what Alan Page said. So collect the data. If you don't have the data, find the data. There's good key data out there that you don't have that you need. So find the data. Work with developers. Work with your salespeople, marketing, whoever, IT, whoever, and find the data. Okay. So the other interesting study we did was on folders. So now you've got all these bookmarks. What do you do with them, right? People organize them into folders, right? Now this action is actually going into the organized bookmarks, saying create folder, and then moving bookmarks into these folders, okay? And I'll just tell you on this one. So I thought it was probably around 20 or something. 20 folders is probably what people make. Because that's a lot to sort of keep track of and move, organize your bookmarks. Turns out it's 400 is, to cover your 90% case, that's 400 folders. Any guesses on what the maximum number was? You want to shout it out? Close. 4,000. So I'll show you the chart here. So this is the distribution. So you have the 90% case down here. To cover 90% of the users, you have to cover this blob. And then it goes way out here. And this one out here, which I call George, this guy had 50,000 bookmarks, 4,000 folders, average of moving 12 or so bookmarks into each of those folders. That guy really needs a date. What's that?
Probably use automation.
Yeah, maybe automation. It could be. Maybe it's one of my testers who are doing some automated generation. I don't think so, though. Okay, so now it's actually going pretty fast, which you probably like. So now I want to try to translate this to how can this be applied to kind of anyone's projects. I'm thinking this is more in terms of larger groups, like if you're a small startup, just a few people. These may not apply so much, but I think they generally apply to everyone. So I'm trying to think about how the sort of the stream scale that we see in the Mozilla project might be show how people can apply these things elsewhere. So we'll go to the first bullet there. So allow anyone to contribute. So, two thoughts I have there is some people I'm sure think, oh, sure, I'm really aggressive and I let a lot of people do it. And some people may sort of, try, but they don't, they're busy, they've got their own responsibilities. But I really challenge you to think about this is, finding, allowing more people to contribute and that mind share, it's kind of like peer programming. The more people you have on a problem, the more innovative solutions and the better solutions you're going to get. So don't get stuck in a rut. Try to keep it fresh, keep people involved. It's kind of like if 2 are better, how about 10 or 100 people? How much better would that be? Some specific points. So even if the ideas are not from your group, make sure you include them or seek them out, right? So simple example is if you're designing a UI or you're doing testing, sometimes testers, get very, focused on their team. How can they do it faster or better, or just trying to get the job done? How about going to your, if you're testing like a desktop product, but you have testers in a web testing side, go talk to them. Go talk to your developers openly about how they would test it. I'm sure some of you do that, but some probably don't. Go talk to colleagues outside and seek their feedback. Talk to sales, marketing, to real customers if you can talk to the real customers, and really seek out their feedback. Make sure you and everyone in your company are jumping in and not treating it as not their job. You've heard this before, but we had this example I'll show you or tell you about it, which is in 3.5 we had a lot of crashes. So for 3.6 we were really trying to nail these and dig into them. We're having this one problem with on Facebook, Farmtown. We were having trouble getting reproducible crashers there. And so we started going, sort of farther and farther out to find people who could give us feedback. And so we started going to HR, to our admin support, to basically everybody in the company was playing Farmtown for a while. And I'm sure they enjoyed that. It's kind of a diversion from their normal jobs. But some of the people in these non-engineering jobs were great at finding the reproducible test cases. So when you need something, go find it. Don't just settle for, well, I'm the one responsible, I'll do it, I'll just try harder, I'll stay up later. Really try to be creative, include more people, try to encourage them to help you, and the next time they have problems, help them. Include a wide variety of people. Like I said, look for other people that are doing things that are different. If you have like a database tester and you're doing UI testing, go talk to them. Maybe there's some interesting perspectives you can get. If you're a UI designer on desktop, go see your UI designer from the website. Just try to bring in different disciplines, different perspectives. And finally, listen and appreciate new ideas. So this is one where so often I've seen myself do this and other people do this, where they say, cool idea, thanks, and they run off, and then you get busy, you don't ever really thank them. Or you don't really listen to them. Like maybe they had 3 ideas and they just told you one. So take your time with people, figure out, listen to them, let them go all the way through, really show appreciation, genuine appreciation, because the next time they'll be more eager to give you more. Don't get so focused on your own work that you don't take that time to appreciate and listen to people. This is very classic, communicate, communicate, communicate. How this, I think, applies specifically, or most primarily for me, is the remote teams is probably the hardest thing to do, the most problematic for people. So make sure you're working well and really including them. This is another one of these, take the time to do it right. So invite them to every meeting, even though you're not sure if they need to be there. You have to over-communicate, over-include them to make sure that they're involved. They're so left out of the loop so often. Good phone etiquette. I've seen so often where people will have maybe some trouble with the phone. They'll say, "Oh well, we have to get started, so we'll fix that as we go along." And then half an hour later, it's still not fixed, or half an hour later, they've missed half the meeting. Right? We have this rule at Mozilla that you don't start a meeting until everybody can hear. And that does a couple things. One is it shows that they are important. So often they're not treated as important, so it shows they're important. Also, I feel like communication problems or bugs are just like any other bug. If you let them fester, if you don't fix them right away, then next time it'll still be broken, and the next time it'll still be broken. So fix it right away and make sure it stays fixed. And so those remote people will be able to fully participate. A couple examples of interesting, innovative ways of communicating with people. We've put webcams in all the break rooms. So you can walk up, you're having your coffee, you look up, and there's your business associate in Toronto having coffee too, and you can have a chat with them. And you can talk about like a meeting that just happened. Maybe they weren't there at the meeting. You can tell them what happened, what was discussed, what the issues were. Maybe there was a hallway conversation that they heard that about some feature is been dropped. You can hear about that. And I was talking to Lisa Crispin about this earlier too. Their company has this little roll-around cart with really high-quality speakers and microphone and webcam, and they can roll that to your desk and have a one-on-one conversation with someone. This metaphor is I think, so powerful. It's like just like you'd invite a person to sit with you, you can invite a remote person to sit with you. And she mentioned that a side effect is they can sometimes hear the conversations happening behind them too. So a lot of these techniques, it's not just about the literal, having a conversation, but getting people included, valuing people. Those kinds of side effects are really important too. Of course, remember international considerations like language and culture. Again, I've seen lots of cases where someone has accent. To like a foreign person, I probably have an accent that is sometimes hard to understand. I probably rush too much sometimes. So always think about the other person and how they are hearing you. Just because you think they have the strong accent doesn't mean that they don't think you have an accent. Also, there's cultural things I found, like someone might say yes to something, but they really mean I'll try. So you've got to be aware of subtleties in different cultures. And finally, this is kind of a broken record, but not just talk a lot, but listen. My favorite example here is you're on the phone and you get to the end of the conversation. You say, "Okay, we're done. See you later." And the person that's leading the meeting sees the team in the room, and they say sort of goodbye to that group. And the people on the phone are like, "Wait," and then the phone's disconnected. Really take your time. Make sure everyone's had their chance to say something. And a couple of good techniques I found is wait for 5 seconds. Say, "Okay, we're signing off," and really give them about 5 seconds to respond. The other tip is to actually call them out, like on the phone. Do you have anything else? Toronto, in China, Japan, in Tokyo, do you have any other comments? To prompt them, make sure they are getting attention. Okay. This is a big one. Seek out the user community. So this is, again, it ties into some of the previous conversations. How do you find those users? You are not the user. Is there ways that you can connect with them more often? Not just during beta tests. At Sun where I was, we had beta tests where we would announce a month out there's a beta coming up. We would give them 2 weeks to download the software, and then like a week to give feedback. And this is all very constraining. We all have too much to do. So often they had a release coming up, or they missed the first email because they're busy, or all kinds of stuff. Giving all these sort of barriers like they have to get the first email, they have to be ready in that 2 weeks, they have to give their feedback within a certain time. All these things cause the beta customers to not really feel they're part of the team. They are just part of your process, right? And it's a very restrictive process. So the more you can do to widen those windows, to even say, here's when we really need the feedback, but if you can't do it by then, give us feedback anytime. That, to me, is really important. Even if you fix the bug they found, that's okay, because another time you may not have fixed the bug. It still may be valuable. So try to open that up and allow them to test when they're available to test and when they're available to give you feedback. As I mentioned, we have nightly testers and we have beta testers. Give them, be very lavish with your feedback. Don't worry about looking bad. It's much better to look bad during the beta time frame, of course, than after your release, right? So make sure you give them plenty of opportunities and plenty of access to these releases. And then finally, try to connect with them. It's very impersonal if you just send emails. And I know that a lot of these programs are very broad, and in Mozilla, we can't connect with all 2 million beta testers. But there's some that are more active, some that are more critical. Finding ways to be more personal, more direct with people. They will respond. They will want to support you, right? If they just get an impersonal email, it's like, more often than not, they won't respond. They don't really feel that tied to you, or like you really care about them that much. Okay, just one more slide here. You'll find effective, flexible tools. So this week, lots of talk about automated tools. Lots of people prescribing things like, this is what worked for me. Don't just listen to what people say and just sort of use it by rote. Think about your specific case, what your developers need. Work in ways and use tools that allow you to have the engineering team to work best, right? So it seems obvious, but so often we're kind of a slave to what maybe a manager decided on or some deal that they cut. IT wants an overall strategy across the whole company. If you want to inspire people, inspire engineers to do the most innovative, creative work, you don't constrain them. You want the needs, the engineers and their innovation to drive the tools, not the tools to constrain innovation. And then I really feel strongly you need a modular approach. A lot of these big tools, they're like one big size fits all. And so I take the philosophy of Unix. Lots of tools you use in innovative ways, rather than one big tool that you sort of try to shoehorn into one thing. Open source tools are very flexible. A lot of them are very good. You do have to be careful because some aren't as well supported, but the good ones are well supported, very effective, very reliable. So check them out. Try them out. It's very inexpensive to try out. You don't have to invest in big contracts and support contracts and all that. And let's see, and that is it. So little plug for the open source. So join a community. It could be any community. Communities are great to build skills and try new things. You can try a new language. You can try a new test tool. They're great opportunities to give something back and to try new things. So try it out. There's a link there to my blog, which has all the links to all the tools I talked about. And if you have any questions at all, you can contact me at tim@redwoodqa.com. So thank you very much.